Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome back. Today we're diving into Dadaism, an art movement from over 100 years ago that still has a lot to say about art and the world today. But to get started, let's go back to the Quizzipedia question that inspired this deep dive. It's season 208, question 11. And the category is art movements. Here's the question. This avant-garde art movement, born during World War I, was known for its anti-art sentiment, challenging traditional definitions of art through provocative works. One of its most famous pieces, Fountain Urinal by Marcel Duchamp, became a symbol of the movement's irreverence and critique of art institutions. What is the name of this influential 20th century movement?
And the answer is Dadaism.
So what exactly was Dadaism?
Well, Dadaism emerged during World War I. As you can imagine, it was a direct response to the horrors and chaos of war, basically a reaction against all the systems and ideologies that Dadaists felt had led to the conflict.
Interesting. So where did it all begin?
Dadaism originated in Zurich, Switzerland in 1916. Switzerland was a neutral country during the war, and a group of artists and intellectuals, including Hugo Ball and Emmy Hennings, founded the Cabaret Voltaire there, which quickly became a central hub for Dadaist activities.
I see. The name Dada itself seems kind of unconventional.
It is, right? The name Dada was actually chosen randomly from a dictionary. This really highlights the movement's embrace of absurdity and chance.
So Dadaism was a rejection of the status quo, but what were some of its core principles?
They challenged the very definition of art. Dadaists rejected traditional notions of beauty and aesthetics. Instead, they embraced the provocative and the absurd. And they were anti-art, in a way. They used their works to critique the art establishment and societal norms.
So can you give me an example of this anti-art sentiment?
Sure. A prime example is Marcel Duchamp's Fountain, which is a ready-made sculpture that's literally just a urinal signed by the artist.
A urinal?
Yep. By presenting a commonplace object as art, Duchamp questioned what art even is. He really challenged the authority of art institutions.
It sounds like they weren't just critiquing art, but broader societal structures as well.
That's right. Dadaists saw a connection between the logic and reason that dominated Western thought and the destructiveness of the war. So they rejected those systems and instead advocated for a more intuitive, emotional, and even chaotic approach to life and creativity.
I see. And another key aspect of Dadaism seems to be its internationalism.
Absolutely. Dadaism wasn't confined to Zurich. It actually spread to major cities across Europe and even to New York. Dadaists promoted a global artistic community. They believed that art should transcend national boundaries.
It seems like Dadaism involved a diverse group of artists with their own unique approaches. Let's discuss some of these key figures and their contributions to the movement.
Well, besides Marcel Duchamp, there was Tristan Tzara. He was a poet and essayist and a central figure in Dadaism. He wrote the Dada Manifesto in 1918. It's a key text that articulated the movement's ideas and called for a rejection of reason and an embrace of chaos and spontaneity.
And what about Hannah Höch?
Hannah Höch was a German artist who pioneered the use of photo montage in Dadaism. Her works were often politically charged and addressed themes of gender and social critique. For example, her piece Cut with the Kitchen Knife Dada through the last Weimar beer-belly cultural epoch of Germany. That piece used photo montage to critique German society in the aftermath of World War I.
What other influential Dadaists should we know about?
Well, Jean Arp was another key figure. He was a French-German artist known for his abstract sculptures and collages. His works often incorporated chance procedures, meaning he kind of let go of control and allowed randomness to dictate the final form of his works. A good example of that is collage with squares arranged according to the laws of chance, where he dropped squares of paper onto a larger sheet and glued them down where they landed, embracing the unpredictable nature of chance. And there were many other important figures in the movement, each with their own unique contributions. Well, there was Hugo Ball, one of the founders of Cabaret Voltaire. He was known for his sound poetry, basically creating abstract vocalizations. And he even used costumes and masks to enhance the performance aspect of his work.
So he was really pushing the boundaries of language.
Exactly. He was exploring the sonic possibilities of poetry.
That must have been quite avant-garde for the time.
Oh, absolutely. And then there was Francis Picabia, a French painter. He introduced Dada to Paris and helped spread its ideas beyond Zurich. He created these satirical mechanomorphic paintings, combining images of machines with human forms.
Interesting. What was he trying to say with that?
It was often a commentary on the increasing mechanization of modern society.
I see. Dadaism really had many facets.
Yes, it did. Another notable Dadaist was Raoul Haussmann. He was a German artist associated with the Berlin Dada group. He was known for his photo montages and assemblages, incorporating found objects and text into his work.
It sounds like his art was pretty raw.
It was raw and unsettling, reflecting the social and political turmoil of post-war Germany.
So even though these artists had their own distinct styles, what united them under the umbrella of Dadaism?
Well, they were united by their rejection of traditional artistic conventions and their embrace of the absurd and the unpredictable, really their desire to use art as a means of social and political critique. They were reacting against what they perceived as the failures of reason and logic, which they believed had led to the devastation of the war.
So how did Dadaists view the role of chance in art?
They were fascinated by chance, and they often incorporated it into their creative process. They believed that by relinquishing control and embracing randomness, they could tap into a deeper level of creativity, one that was not bound by conscious intention.
It sounds almost like a form of anti-authoritarianism in art making.
Yes, in a way it was. They were challenging the idea of the artist as a masterful creator and embracing the idea that art could emerge from unexpected sources and through unplanned processes.
What were some of the techniques and mediums that Dadaists used to express their ideas?
Well, apart from ready-mades, photo montage, and performance, they used a wide range of approaches, including collage, assemblage, and sound poetry. They weren't bound by any particular medium or style. Their goal was to challenge conventions and disrupt expectations, and they used any means necessary to achieve that.
Could you elaborate on how collage and assemblage fit into the Dadaist aesthetic?
Sure, collage allowed them to bring together disparate images and texts, creating jarring juxtapositions and unexpected meanings. And assemblage involved using found objects to create three-dimensional works that blurred the lines between art and everyday life.
So both techniques reflected their interest in breaking down traditional hierarchies and categories.
Exactly.
The Dadaism only lasted for a few years, right?
Yeah, from about 1916 to the early 1920s.
How did that short lifespan impact its influence on later artistic movements?
Well, even though it was short-lived, it had a profound and lasting impact on the art world. Its ideas and techniques continued to resonate and influence numerous artistic movements that followed. Well, Surrealism, for example. It drew inspiration from Dada's interest in the irrational and the subconscious. Surrealists explored these themes in a more dreamlike and poetic way.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Given the shared interest in pushing boundaries and questioning reality, what other movements did Dadaism influence?
Well, conceptual art, which emerged in the 1960s, also has roots in Dadaism. Conceptual artists prioritize the concept or idea behind the artwork over its visual or material qualities, echoing Duchamp's ready-mades, and the Dadaists focus on challenging traditional notions of artistic skill and craftsmanship.
So the idea that art doesn't have to be a beautifully crafted object, but can be an idea, a provocation that comes from Dadaism.
Exactly. Dadaism really opened up possibilities for what art could be. It paved the way for movements like conceptual art and performance art.
What about pop art? Did Dadaism have any influence on its emergence?
Definitely pop art, with its use of everyday objects and imagery from popular culture, owes a debt to Dadaism. Artists like Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein, who embraced mass-produced imagery and challenged the distinction between high art and low culture. They were influenced by that Dadaist spirit of questioning artistic hierarchies and blurring boundaries.
So Dadaism's legacy extended beyond the visual arts and into performance and happenings as well.
Absolutely. The Dadaists' use of performance, their blurring of the lines between art and life, and their embrace of chance and spontaneity, all of that was influential on later movements like Fluxus and Happenings, which emerged in the mid-20th century. Those movements further emphasized the importance of the event, the action, and the audience experience in art.
Looking back, how would you sum up Dadaism's impact on the art world?
Dadaism had a seismic impact on the trajectory of art despite its short lifespan. It challenged the very definition of art, questioned the role of the artist and the institution, and expanded the possibilities of artistic expression. It broke down barriers between art and life, high culture and low culture, and paved the way for a more diverse and inclusive art world.
It sounds like Dadaism was pretty controversial.
Dadaism was accused of being nihilistic, of having no constructive goals.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think their nihilism was more about rejecting existing systems that they saw as having failed. Rather than rejecting all values altogether, their aim was to dismantle these systems to create space for something new.
So what about the criticism that they didn't offer any solutions?
Well, Dadaism was about provoking thought and challenging assumptions, not necessarily providing concrete answers.
Were there any other criticisms?
Yes, some said that Dadaism was elitist and inaccessible to the general public, that its focus on abstraction and nonsensical language could be difficult for those unfamiliar with avant-garde art to grasp.
It seems like that's a tension that many avant-garde movements face. The challenge of being radical and challenging while also remaining accessible to a wider audience.
It is. But Dadaism's influence went far beyond its initial audience. It shaped artistic movements and ideas that reached a much broader public in the decades that followed.
So ultimately, how should we remember Dadaism?
Dadaism was a radical and transformative movement that continues to resonate today. It serves as a reminder that art can be a powerful tool for social critique, a catalyst for change, and a force for disrupting complacency. It encourages us to question, to challenge, and to imagine new possibilities for art in the world.
Well, thanks for taking this deep dive into Dadaism with me.
It was my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.